Welcome to week 7 of the NFL season. It's the War Room powered by Pro Football Focus and brought to you by DraftKings.com. I'm your host, Jeff Ratcliffe. Dealing with some technological difficulty here. Co-host Pat Thorman having an issue with his audio, so we'll see if we can get him up and going shortly here. But I wanted to get into the show. We have a little under an hour and a half before the rest of the games kick off. Right now, of course, we're privileged to have a 9:30 a.m. game, so that means football all day long, and there's nothing better than that. So before we get into the show, though, just really quickly here, make sure that you are heading over to Pro Football Focus and checking out all the great content that we offer, including all those awesome tools, the matchup, wide receiver cornerback matchup tool, the DFS tool, the projected box scores, and the list goes on and on and on. And you can get access to all of that if you don't already have it for $29.99. And also, check out our new player grades. The player grades are fantastic. And one of the tricks before was, how do we actually process all of these grades that PFF offered? Well, we made it much more user-friendly and easy to access. Everything's kind of like Madden at this point, where everybody's just out of a 100-point scale. So check that out now. That is available to consumers, so you can certainly get access and start using that today. Speaking of today, well, we got a lot to talk about here on the docket. And I'm going to just go over a couple situations that people are probably wondering about. Namely, we have one in New England. We have one in San Diego. We also have some news in Washington, a few other things. But first and foremost, with New England, it really does sound like Dion Lewis is not going to play in this one. Adam Schefter tweeted out this morning that he's really on the extreme questionable side of things here. And so what does that leave us with for fantasy purposes? And Pat is with us, and I can hear Pat. Booyah, right? I feel like Chris Clemens after he stumbled in on that touchdown earlier this morning. How about Chris Clemens? This guy is actually having a really good game, but that's defense anyway. So, Pat, it's good. I just started up, did the little spiel that introduced the new player grades over at Pro Football Focus. I want to talk a little bit about some of the biggest issues that we're dealing with so far this morning. And those issues, of course, first and foremost, Dion Lewis. And so it looks like Dion Lewis is probably not going to go in this one, and that means we're going to be left with, decisions to be made if you've been relying on Dion Lewis. We know that LeGarrette Blount is there. Here's what I'm going to say about this first and foremost, Pat, before I toss over to you. LeGarrette Blount is going to be running against a front four that consists of Sheldon Richardson, Muhammad Wilkerson, and Leonard Williams. Not to mention Snacks is also there too. That means this is not a LeGarrette Blount day. This is not a day where you just simply plug LeGarrette Blount in and expect to see what you saw at him last week. I'm definitely fading him today, but there are potential opportunities here. So what's your sense of this? I know you're up there in New England, so you have a better sense probably than I do.
Yeah, I mean, interesting that you mentioned that the Jets. Everyone was worried about how they were going to get all those four guys on the field running a 3-4, and they just play them all. They run a 4-3. It's simple. Yeah, we'll talk about overthinking it. But yeah, I completely agree. This is not a Blount game, and we've seen them in the past. If they're facing a really good run defense, which this obviously is, they're not going to bang their head against the wall. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be probably primarily James White. We're going to see some Brandon Bolden. I know that's not what everyone wants to hear, but it's going to be a quick passing game. It's going to be like what Brady looked like against the Bills back in week 2 when he got rid of the ball under 2 seconds on average. So it's going to be Edelman, even though Revis will probably be shadowing him, but it's going to be those quick releases. I think it's a Gronkowski game. The number, and so Todd Bowles blitzes a ton, and Brady's numbers against the blitz are excellent. His targets to Gronkowski, I think Gronkowski's caught 8 of 9 targets against the blitz for 135 yards and 5 touchdowns so far. So it's going to be Brady might throw the ball 50 times, and the only way the Jets are really going to prevent that is if they're able to grind the clock with Chris Ivory.
Absolutely, and if there's a week in GPP to play Rob Gronkowski, this is the week. And he's super expensive, I know. But there are other options here, and maybe one of the other options, by the way, too, just really quickly, the Boston Globe is also echoing what I just said. It's not going to be a LeGarrette Blount day. Could see a little split between Brandon Bolden and James White. So White is super risky GPP guy, but you can pivot and you can play some punts at the running back position. The wide receiver, okay, everybody's talked about Michael Floyd, we get it, and you can do that. But at the running back position, Matt Jones is a player who's really standing out to me. He obviously now is going to be more involved in the passing game with Chris Thompson out. Alfred Morris is what Alfred Morris is. He's an effective plotter is really what he is. I mean, he's good at what he does, and that's about all he can do. He's not going to be involved in the passing game. Jones is a dynamic kid. He's a big kid. He's got some Marshawn Lynch to his game, and you like that a lot. You like the matchup. So, I mean, Pat, this is a guy who I'm pivoting off of, just doing it this morning right before the show, throwing him into a couple lineups. So, what are your thoughts there with the Redskins running backs?
Oh, absolutely. I did the same thing. There's some pretty strong whispers coming out that he's going to be quite involved today. And like you mentioned, without Chris Thompson, they're looking for that passing threat out of the backfield. And we know Alfred Morris isn't it. He is a very effective plotter. When game script is right. I know the Skins are, I think they're 3.5-point favorites, but that's one of those games that can go either way. Tampa Bay's coming off a bye, so I think Jones will be involved throughout. I think he's super cheap on daily sites, and he's another guy. I prefer him. Brandon Oliver's getting a lot of buzz right now, and people are kind of moving him up the rankings. But I mean, this is still a tough matchup, run defense wise. Oakland's got a good run defense. I think this is a Woodhead game. I like Jones better than Oliver today. One of those sneaky pivots.
Yeah, and absolutely. You actually foreshadowed to what I was going to talk about next in San Diego. And San Diego's really tricky. Now, we're going to go through the games like we normally do, but usually we only hit up the 1 o'clock games. And this is a 4 o'clock game, only 2 on the docket today. And we have a couple issues here. Melvin Gordon sounds like he's not going to play, and that would mean Brandon Oliver does get an uptick. But I agree with you. Woodhead, he would be the play, especially in PPR format. This Oakland defense is maybe a little bit better than people realize in certain areas. Certain areas, yes, they're deficient in the secondary. We get it. But against the run, you're right. Curtis Lofton, he may not be – he's terrible in coverage, and he's off the coverage duties now, but he is a good run defender. So it's going to be tough sledding there for early down work. But the other issue here is Antonio Gates, Ladarius Green. And, the report earlier today, okay, so he's dealing with this MCL sprain. And the report, and Pat, this is what's really telling to me. He will be available to play next week. Okay, well, then he's sitting, right? That's basically what I read into that. If I read the tea leaves here, which means that Ladarius Green, really intriguing. Every tight end not named Owen Daniels, who has faced the Oakland Raiders this season, has destroyed them. So how do you process this? Because that's basically my thought process right now.
Yeah, I'm going with Green, even in my cash lineups. I mean, he's super cheap. He'll let you do a lot of other things. Even if Gates does play, Green can still easily pay off his price against, like you mentioned, the Raiders' tight end defense is abysmal. So say Gates starts and he just comes in around the red zone. But between the 20s, it's going to be mostly Green. And I think Stevie Johnson's playing. Keenan Allen's probably going to play. He's banged up. It's going to be a game that Rivers could throw the ball, 45, 50 times. So you want a piece of that, and you want a piece of this Oakland tight end defense.
Absolutely, you want to go after these guys. All right, so let's hit up some of these active inactives and things starting to trickle in here. Let's go to a complete game. So we have the complete inactive active report for the Saints and the Colts, which is obviously a really interesting game. Nothing standing out too crazy here in terms of inactives for the Saints. Active will be Dannell Ellerbe. Marcus Colston is active too. You don't care. But Dannell Ellerbe, for IDP purposes, is now playing every down. So, hey, fire him up. He's an LB3. You like that play. You like what you saw out of him last week. Pat, Brandon Cooks, Willie Snead, this whole offense in this game where this should be favorable. I guess, if you had to play one of those two guys in DFS this week, who are you leaning towards and why?
Well, I mean, Snead's the guy that everyone kind of wants to fit in there because he's pretty cheap and he's been heavily involved. I mean, he's going to run his routes mostly in the middle of the field, which is how you want to attack that Colts defense. They're pretty strong on the outside with their corners. So I'm definitely a little more attracted to Snead, especially for the price. My only hesitation with him versus last week is, I mean, Colston's back. We're not interested in Colston, but if he shaves 2 or 3 targets off of Snead, that definitely takes his ceiling down. So in that general area, if you're looking for a cash game play, you got Crabtree, who I like. I like his matchup. Diggs is still in that area, although there's a little ambiguity there with Charles Johnson. So I am on Snead over Cooks for the price. But in GPPs, I think Cooks, he certainly has a talent to bust one or two, and he's not going to be high owned. So, and it should be a high scoring game. So I think Cooks is a little interesting in GPPs in a sneaky way.
Yeah, and for Diggs, his quarterback is allergic to throwing touchdown passes, so I'm fading him completely. I just don't get the hype. I never got the Charles Johnson hype. I don't get the Stephon Diggs hype, at least in this offense. Yes, he's a fast, fluid athlete, but hey, whatever. So are 60% of these guys out there. It is what it is. So I'm not playing this guy this week. Also, keep in mind Vontae Davis not going to shadow with Toller back. Davis plays his side. He's not the most comfortable shadowing. He prefers to play his side. So we're going to see him on both Cooks and Snead at various points in this game. So no worries about shadowing there. On the other side of the ball, Indianapolis, nobody really sticking out here who's active or inactive. But for fantasy purposes, I just want to get your sense of Andrew Luck here. Following last week, it looked like he got back on track. Now, it wasn't a great game. He doesn't look like the playoff 2014 Andrew Luck. But what is your sense with Andrew Luck? Are you back on with this guy, or do you still have concerns?
He wasn't letting it rip by any means. I mean, there was a couple of throws that sailed on him. You could tell he wasn't comfortable. He actually looked better in that opening drive. I think it was a 14-play drive where he was just throwing the ball short. They dinked and dunked down the field. It was an impressive drive. And then he kind of, as the game went on, he kind of had to force a little bit downfield. But he's a guy who's not too many people are on in GPPs, which is rare. So it's almost worth taking a shot at a guy like him in a high over/under game. I think it's 52, just to get some exposure to a low-owned Andrew Luck. Obviously pairs very well with Moncrief, who has caught a touchdown in all 4 games that Luck has played. He's been targeted as much as Hilton when Luck has played. So those guys are 1 and 1A really. When Luck is taking snaps, so I definitely want some exposure to that game, to that pass offense, and it'll be interesting. I have a tough sense of reading Gore and Bradshaw, especially on passing downs. I'm interested to see how Bradshaw does, or how much work he takes away from Gore on passing downs.
Yeah, that should be interesting. I don't mind a double stack here. I don't mind going Moncrief and Hilton, because if this is one of those games where you could get both, I mean, I don't see that as being very high owned. And it's sneaky, especially if you use somebody like Matt Jones. You can get some really interesting players in your lineups this week. So let's roll over to some of these questions real quick before we get back into the games. And in a PPR, John is asking Brandon Oliver, Shane Vereen, or Darren McFadden, and that's pretty close. I mean, you have a lot of kind of similar players here. My concern with McFadden is if Michael gets in there and chips away a little bit at some of the work that we saw, because McFadden seemed to be that replacement on passing downs that the Cowboys were looking for, but there could be some potential there. Oliver, again, we talked about it. It's a little shaky as well, the matchup. Vereen's kind of sneaky, but Vereen's so inconsistent. This is so close for me. I mean, I'll probably lean slightly Vereen here, but I'm not happy about any of these, Pat.
Yeah, I agree. I see Vereen and McFadden pretty similarly. Both of those defenses give up a lot of catches to running backs. Those guys are both playing that passing down role, and I can see Vereen taking on a bigger role. His 2-8 target games have come at home against teams that have given up a lot of catches to running backs, so I think he's kind of a sneaky play today. Dallas's run defense, pure run defense, is pretty strong, so I think they might be throwing the ball a little bit more than you'd expect, more work than Rashad Jennings is used to.
Yeah, absolutely. So then we move on to Robert here, and he's saying Justin Forsett or Antonio Gates. Well, I don't want to risk this one, so I'm just going to lean towards Forsett here.
Yep.
I mean, that's just the smart play. Any disagreement there?
No, not at all. Yeah, Gates. Even if Gates is active, he can just be running around in circles and not getting too many passes.
No, this is interesting though, because Damien has a question about John Brown, Brandon Cooks, and it's kind of the same situation where we're a little iffy. But I think I do actually lean towards John Brown here. It sounds like he's going to go, so I really don't have any concerns there's going to be any setbacks in the meantime. And this is such a fantastic matchup. You want to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he had some hamstring tightness last weekend. He almost had 200 yards. I know they said he had some setback with the other hamstring this week, but Arians seemed pretty confident he was going to be okay, and he's got another day to rest playing tomorrow night.
Stop the press is Stephon Diggs, starter. I don't care. So what does it matter? Come on, people. But anyway, this is actually important news, though. Jeremy Maclin is going to be inactive in this one against the Pittsburgh Steelers. On the Steelers side, what I'm seeing is, well, Stephon Tuitt is inactive. Hopefully you were paying attention. You saw that one last night. Ben Roethlisberger inactive. I love that he tried to sneak his way into this game. But this is pretty big news. Jeremy Maclin inactive. So we'll see a little bit of Albert Wilson here. Not good for fantasy purposes, but if you were a Jeremy Maclin owner, you want him out of your lineup. So let's get back to these questions. And this is an interesting one. The question deals with DeAndre Hopkins and Bernard Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins, and it Grimes shadows him. Are you concerned with Grimes shadowing Hopkins at all? If that is the scenario, are you concerned?
No, I'm not concerned. And he possibly could. I mean, he was shadowing Marshall for a little while in that last London game before he got hurt. But honestly, I mean, Hopkins is going to get such a huge target share that I mean, even if he does break up a few plays, he's the only really good corner that Miami has. But I don't think he's that good that he's a guy that you're going to avoid, especially with a guy that's so hot as Hopkins.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it at all. Google Brett Guyon's wife if you want to see an interesting YouTube video, but I won't talk any more about that. Anyway, moving to Garrett King, it looks like he's working the waiver wire hard this week because he has a question of Stephon Diggs or Brandon Oliver as a flex in standard scoring. Pat, I don't know about you, but in these situations, if it's a standard scoring league, I tend to lean towards the running back. Even if the running back's in a committee situation like this, I tend to lean towards the running back. So I'm going to give the slight edge to Oliver there, but I mean, it is very close for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and if you go with the likely game script, by the end of that game, Oakland should be down. San Diego, would probably be leaning a little bit more on the run, as well as they can, in a tough matchup. And as far as Diggs, I think Minnesota's going to run the ball. And speaking of which, Adrian Peterson was super low owned on the Thursday night GPP on FanDuel. I think he was 4%. Plus, there's this illness thing that's going around about him, but he sounds like he's going to be completely fine. As far as paying up for a stud who's going to be low owned in GPPs, AP is certainly in play.
Yeah, and a weird week at running back because you have the uber chalk plays, Freeman and Gurley. And then you have some sneaky ones. Another player who I've been looking at as a sneaky guy, low ownership, reasonably low ownership, Latavius Murray in a very strong matchup. So and let's not forget here that Manti Te'o doubtful, so he's not going to play. And Eric Weddle is also out for the Chargers. By the way, you IDP folks, make sure you get Eric Weddle out of your lineups. So that bodes positively. If he can get to the second level, boy, oh boy, we could see a big game out of Murray. So if you want to fade the crowd, if you're looking for differentiation in GPPs, those are Peterson, Murray. Those are some players to look at if you want to spend a little bit at the position. Moving to Henry's question, and we have Jordan Matthews or Amari Cooper. Pat, I think this is interesting because we have some false narratives out there. Josh Norman going to shadow Jordan. No, he's not. He doesn't play the slot. So he's not going to. You're going to see Josh Norman on like Riley Cooper and Josh Hubb. And Riley Cooper is really great at catching the ball, falling down, and curling up into the fetal position. I'm not really worried about that. I think Jordan Matthews is a really sneaky play this week. It's close between him and Cooper. Cooper's going to see Jason Verrett. That's tough. So for me, I might lean slightly towards Matthews, even with Sam Bradford as his quarterback.
I agree, and for that reason with Verrett on Cooper, that's one of the reasons I like Crabtree. He's got a much better matchup against Flowers, and yeah, I mean Matthews he's been a huge disappointment. With the drops and the fumbles and how many consecutive weeks of him burning guys that have invested in him. But he's going to be lower owned than he was, and he's in a good matchup, like you said. He's probably the best matchup that Bradford's going to be looking at. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ben-Wickery is solid, but he's no Josh Norman.
Solid as your pronunciation of his name. So let's go to Atlanta, Tennessee here, because this is an interesting one on the Tennessee side. Marcus Mariota inactive, we knew that. But Zach Mettenberger is starting, and here's a guy who I think we have some, there's a lot of confusion here, and this is why it's important to pay attention to the college game, because we've seen a little bit of production out of him when he's been in sort of spot duty, preseason duty, etc. But this is a guy who couldn't win at the collegiate level with Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, and Jeremy Hill. Why did they not win a national championship? Okay, so there is concerns here, but he's dirt cheap, especially on Yahoo this week. He is dirt cheap. He's $20, which is the bottom bare minimum. On some of the smaller sites, he's also really cheap. So I guess what are your thoughts and expectations for Zach Mettenberger under center against a Falcons defense that has some pluses but also some major glaring weaknesses?
Yeah, I think the thing with Mettenberger is, he's so immobile that he makes a lot of his mistakes when he's under pressure, and Atlanta's not really rushing the passer very well. They got Vic Beasley, but now they're playing on grass, so I'm not sure he's going to be in Mettenberger's face. So when he's got time to throw, he is pretty accurate. So you want to see him take some shots downfield, which kind of seems to be in his DNA. Dorial Green-Beckham is. I'm not saying to play him this week, but I'm expecting to see a little bit of something out of him. I like Delaney Walker. His targets to Walker last year when he was a quarterback are the same as Mariota's have been this year. So yeah, I like Delaney Walker. I expect to see a few big plays, and if Atlanta can't put a rush on him, I think he could put up. He's certainly going to be able to pay his DFS price.
Yeah, he's another one. If you want to go cheap, and this is a week to do it. And not go with the Olsen or especially the Gronkowski play. I mean, you can get Ladarius Green in there, Delaney Walker in there, even somebody like Gary Barnidge. And I'm not crazy. I'm not making that play this week, but I know some people are. He's cheaper as well, so you can save yourself some money. By the way, the chalk defense. I don't know why the Rams are so cheap. I don't get it. I just don't get it. But I'm playing them, and somebody in here said too much Gurley. I'm not even going to try and pronounce your name, buddy. Too much Gurley and too much Rams. Yeah, absolutely Gurley. Trey Mason inactive in this one. I mean, what's the over-under on Gurley? What would you put the over-under, Pat, on Gurley's carries today?
Oh, it's over-under is probably 28 to 30, and I would probably take the over.
Yeah, I was actually going to say 28.5. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this game script is going to favor that. I mean, I know Jeff Fisher is going to feed the guy. He's coming off a bye. He got a huge workload before the bye. Cleveland can't stop the run. I mean, he's going to be super high owned, but it's one of those situations where he's cheap, so you can do so much differentiation with the rest of your lineup that you just kind of, hold your nose, eat the chalk, and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And our buddy, who I can't pronounce his name, or I'm not going to try to pronounce his name, is saying that, Pat, you have a small say in decorating the mantle behind you. But let me point this out, folks. If you look to the right of the screen, you're going to see this weird blue glowing, like, rectangular-shaped thing. That's an award that Pat won, all right? He was the best newcomer for the Fantasy Sports Writers Association. I picked that one out there. All right, we're coming down the home stretch. We have about 2.5 minutes. Maybe we'll go a little overtime since we got started a little late today. So get your questions in the chat if you have them. And Damian has a question. In a standard scoring league, he needs one wide receiver and a flex. Out of Moncrief, Jarvis Landry, LeGarrette Blount, Amari Cooper, Martavis Bryant, and Danny Woodhead. So basically your whole team he gave to us. Let's see. So I'm starting Moncrief absolutely here. So he would be the wide receiver. Now the flex, since it's a standard league, that does change things for me a little bit. Boy, that's close. It's super, super close. I'm not trusting Bryant just because this matchup is actually tougher than people realize. Landry Jones has to go up against Justin Houston in his first start here. So I don't like that. They had a week to prepare. So it really comes down to between Jarvis Landry and Danny Woodhead. Yeah. And boy, oh boy, I think I'm going to lean Woodhead here because, again, I break the ties with running backs in standard leagues. I don't know about you, Pat.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and Woodhead, as we've seen, even when Gordon was active, is the red zone guy. So, he's going to get some touchdown opportunities, which doesn't seem to fit his profile as a passing down back. But yes, but in standard, like you said, that knocks Landry down because he's not a guy who's really getting too much work in the red zone. So yeah, Moncrief for sure, and Woodhead.
And Landry's a guy I really like what he's done as a pro. He came into the league a little bit undersized, a little bit slow, great hands, but what he did, he put muscle on his frame. He really bulked up, and the guy now looks like an NFL player. I don't think I could say that last year in terms of his body size. Now he really does really like Jarvis Landry in dynasty purposes as well. So, hey, let's hope he has a slightly down game so we can all go out and trade for him in our dynasty leagues. Adrian Peterson or Devontae Freeman. that's a spoil of riches there. I'm leaning Devontae Freeman over Adrian Peterson. Pat, what do you think? And this is for DFS.
Yep. For cash games, I'm definitely on Freeman. I'm going to eat the chalk, with Freeman and Gurley this week. Especially for cash games, and you don't have to worry about ownership percentages. But as far as GPPs, I would kind of sprinkle one in one lineup and one in the other. Because and keep Freeman out of the lineup with Julio. Because you want to pay up for Julio for some differentiation there. He's got a great matchup with Bleedy Ray Wilson. But you probably, if you're gonna have AP, grab Julio. If you're gonna have Freeman, go Hopkins or a different receiver.
Yeah, my cash game lineup is about as chalk as it can get this week, and I'm absolutely loving it after a really rough week last week. I felt bad until I read a little profile on our buddy John Bales, and it said that he lost 17,500 last week, so I don't really feel that bad anymore. But anyway, it looks like no other questions in the queue. Yes, that is true. Wow is right. No more questions in the queue, so we're going to hit the road here, click some buttons, get our lineups polished up. So best of luck to all of you guys this week. We'll be back. Hopefully no technological failures next week. Same time, same place, week 8 next week. So we're making a turn for home towards the fantasy playoffs. Remember, check the site out. All the great stuff that you can do. And if you want to get in on DFS, it's not too late. You can use the promo code PFF this week to get a free entry in that $5 big tournament, the GPP, that you can win a ton of money if you put the right lineup in. So for Pro Football Focus, he's Pat, I'm Jeff, and that's a wrap.